Alright, in this lecture, I'm going to show you how to draw an actual well-rendered image with perspective. Because up to this point, we've only been drawing really simple shapes and unrealistic houses and buildings. But I want to show you how to actually draw a realistic drawing that is well-rendered, has lights and shadows, and has a lot of detail in it. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I've done here is I've created my 60% mark. So if you remember the last lecture, we went over how you want to stay within 60% of the space between your two vanishing points. Now I'm creating the 60% mark vertically. And so now that I have that marked off, I know within what space I want to create my image. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the basic shape for my building. Now I'm not sure what type of building this is going to be yet. I just want to figure out where I want that building to be. And I accidentally drew this to the wrong point. I drew it to my 60% point. And so I need to erase this and I need to fix that so it's going to my vanishing point. So make sure you're always double checking that you're going to the correct point. Now I'm adding in my vertical lines for the edges of my building. Next, I'm going to go ahead and draw in two vertical lines, and then I'm going to draw in a horizontal line across here, and now I have the base for my doorway, and then I can start adding in perspective lines to create a ledge on that doorway. Then I'm going to add this bottom ledge, like so. Great, so now I have my doorway and it's nice and indented. Next, I want to add a circle window above my door, and so what I need to do is I first need to create a square shape in perspective. And then like we did before earlier in a lecture, we're going to go ahead and create the X through our square, and then we're going to create the plus sign through it so we can find where that diamond shape is, and now we can go ahead and draw that diamond shape. And I'm actually going to skip the diamond shape part because for me, I'm able to just see about where my circle should be and I can just sketch that in really quickly. Next, let's go ahead and add a bottom edge to that door and a crack in the door so that it's a two-door door. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add the lines for sort of a cylinder type tower. And now I'm going to find the center of this square. The reason why I'm doing that is because I want to create a peaked roof, and I want that peak to be right in the center of my wall. So now that I know where that center is, I can make a point on my center line and connect that back to each corner of my cube, and now I have a peaked roof. Next, I need to finish off the top of that roof by adding in that line back to my vanishing point. And now I'm going to start marking about where I want the windows on this side of my building to be. Now these windows are going to have arches, but for now we're just going to create the rectangle part of them. And notice that I'm drawing my lines really lightly so I can come back and erase them later, because a lot of these are guidelines and they're not the final product line. Then I need to create a square shape across these windows because we're going to make them arched, and so we need to find where that square is to make those circles. Then I'm going to go ahead and add the other crossing line so we can find those centers. And then we can go ahead and draw a vertical line coming straight up through the center of that, and then we're going to come to our vanishing point and draw a line that goes straight through the center of all the rest of these. And now we can go ahead and sketch in those rounded corners to get our arch. Now I'm going to leave out the bottom arch because we just want the top part of the circle, and so we can leave out that bottom part. Next, I'm going to go ahead and create a ledge or an edge for our door or windows so that they look like they're actually indented into the building. Now I'm going to go ahead and create the rounded edge for my tower because I want it to be cylindrical. So I'm first going to create a square up here in perspective that's at the top of my tower. And then I'll go ahead and put the X through it so I can figure out where that circle is in perspective. And then I'll go ahead and sketch that circle in. Then I'm going to go ahead and put a dome on top of that. And then I'm going to go ahead and create the other side of my edge or my wall on the inside of my window. And then I can go ahead and find the bottom of that by placing my ruler to the vanishing point and then connecting them. And then I just want to find about where that ledge is there so I can easily sketch in the inside of the curve, like so. All right, and then it's important to really think about your drawing and what you want to do next. So I took a little bit of time to stare at it for a while and figure out what I wanted to do next. And what I decided is I want to add some flower boxes here on the side of the building. So I'm going to go ahead and sketch in some very simple cubes. And once again, I sketched to the wrong point, so I need to erase that. And then I'll come back to the right point. So you need to come all the way back to your vanishing point. And then I'll go ahead and get the top side of that. And then I'll go ahead and create the top surface of my box. And then I want to break this up into two separate pieces because I don't just want one long continuous flower box, I want multiple ones. Then I'll go ahead and connect to this bottom edge, and always make sure that you're leading back to a point. All right, and once again, I'm sitting and thinking, trying to figure out what I want to do next. Make sure you do that, take some time. So I decided that I'm going to add a ledge in this box, and then I'm going to add some plants on top of it. So at this point, I basically have all of my perspective laid out, and now it's time to start sketching in some detail. You always want to start with what's in front first, because if you start with what's in back, you don't necessarily know what's going to be in front of it, and then you might have to end up doing a lot of erasing. And so that's why I'm starting with these planter boxes first, is so that then I don't have to come back and erase things that I accidentally drew where I wanted my plants. Then I'll go ahead and do this back one. Then I'm going to go ahead and add in a tree there. And with the tree, I don't even have to worry about perspective. I can just draw a tree in. Then I'm going to go ahead and erase away some of these lines. Next, I'm going to go ahead and start darkening in these lines so they become much more solidified. And make sure you only solidify the lines that you are sure you want to keep. If you're not sure, leave them light until you know later that you want them or you don't want them. Because if you darken them, it's going to be really hard to come back and erase them. Then I'm going to go ahead and darken in this circle. And then I'm going to add in a second circle within this one, because this circle is going to also be indented like the doorway. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in a window with crisscrossing boards. Next, I'm going to go ahead and darken in my door. Then I'll get this bottom part of the door, and then I want to darken that crack in the door. Then I can darken all of these lines because I know I want to keep these. And notice that I'm not going all the way up. I'm stopping right at the beginning of that circle because the line won't continue after that. It's going to curve into that circle. Then I can go ahead and darken in those circles, like so. Great. Then I'm going to go ahead and darken in these lines. And then I'll lastly darken in this line right here. Perfect. Next, I'm going to go ahead and solidify the lines down here at the bottom of the windows. And then I'm going to go ahead and solidify the lines at the bottom of the wall. And notice that I'm skipping where the windows are because I'm going to erase those guidelines. Then I'll go ahead and solidify the cylinder, and then solidify that dome, and even add some detail on it. Now, what I want to do next is I want to go ahead and add a center line down the middle of my windows so I can break them up into separate panes. Then I'm going to go ahead and draw lines across my windows like so. And this will be the horizontal dividing panes. So I'm trying to keep them as evenly spaced as possible. And also notice that I'm coming back to my vanishing point to create these lines. You always want your lines that are going horizontally to always be going back to a vanishing point. All right, great. Now lastly, I'm going to add a little bit of some detail on the ground, just some random lines that are in perspective. That way it helps us see the perspective on the floor, and it'll also help guide me later when I want to lay down bricks and rocks and stuff on the ground. All right, that brings us to the end of this lecture. So in this lecture, we drew an entire building and some planter boxes next to it, and we made sure that we were following the 60% rule, and we also wanted to really think about how our building was shaped and make sure that it was actually shaped like a real building and not a really exaggerated building. In the next lecture, we're going to go ahead and add more detail to this and also light and shadow and turn it into a more realistic drawing. Thanks for watching, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next lecture.